Okay, check this out. Worlds together, worlds apart.
Is that a new Rihanna song?
It's the theme of this unit, and we're the ones introducing it.
Oh, I get it. I'm in North America, and you're way over in Australia.
Worlds apart. But this video brings our worlds together, thanks to globalization. When it's 3 in the afternoon for you, for me, it's 9 o'clock the next morning. But we're both sharing the light of the same sun.
When the sun shine, we shine together. Rihanna from Umbrella? Never mind.
Hi, I'm Kim Lochner.
And I'm Colby Burnett. We're introducing Unit 2, the Global Tapestry, from 1200 to 1450 CE.
In the last unit, we explored the power of narratives. How we tell a story and how we contextualize it changes our understanding of that story. In Unit 2, we're starting the story of this course in the year 1200 CE. In 1200, most people lived local lives, disconnected from distant societies. The ways that people governed themselves and the things they believed in varied dramatically from place to place. But from 1200 to 1450, there were dramatic expansions in networks of exchange that began linking different regions together. Trade, conquest, and systems of belief brought diverse and distinct communities together in new ways.
Absolutely. And nowhere was this change more pronounced than in Afro-Eurasia. That's the huge landmass made up of Africa, Europe, and Asia. Other parts of the world, like the Americas, Australasia, and the islands of the Pacific Ocean, feature similar patterns of growth and interconnection. But Afro-Eurasia had denser and larger populations, so connections increased most dramatically there. In the 13th century, there was more trade along Afro-Eurasia trade networks than ever before. A string of cities spread from the Pacific coast of Asia through the Indian Ocean, the Red Sea, the African and European Mediterranean, and the Atlantic coast of Europe. They traded goods, money, and ideas across a vast network of overland trade routes. The power of the mighty Mongol Empire ensured order over much of this network. In the Indian Ocean, the spread of Islam helped connect distant ports and merchants through shared belief. The expansion of trade networks created new patterns of production and distribution as economies shifted to provide goods for long-distance trade and travel. Along with those shifts, new communities were created, and old ones were transformed. Now, Kim has some great unit questions to share, so let's check in with her.
Thanks, Colby. Yeah, don't forget that each unit has a short list of big questions to think about. For Unit 2, we ask, what were the similarities and differences among societies in different parts of the world? What caused the expansion and contraction of trade networks during this period? How did networks of exchange connect societies, and how were communities changed by these connections? They say a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's a pretty apt metaphor since it was especially true in the Indian Ocean trading system. We have plenty of archaeological evidence that trade expanded in this period, and there's even some economic data to back that up. This chart measures the growth of world GDP, or gross domestic product, which is one of the main ways that economists measure the wealth of a country. Here, we see that the global GDP has risen a lot in the last 2,000 years. Most of that growth happened very recently, in the last century or so. If we zoom in closer, we see that for the millennium from 1 CE to 1000 CE, GDP didn't change very much. But then, from 1000 to 1500 CE, the global GDP more than doubled. A big part of this change was the expansion of long-distance trade. That expansion transformed networks and systems of production and distribution, but it also reshaped communities around the world. For one example, let's travel to the coast of East Africa. By the 13th century, several powerful merchant city-states had emerged here in a region called the Swahili Coast. Oh, message from Colby. Let me do the Swahili coast. All right.
Oh, okay. In earlier periods, the Swahili coast was a lot like the inland communities of East Africa, agricultural, fishing, and pastoralist societies. But after Arab merchants started coming to this region, locals turned to trade. Large trading cities with tens of thousands of people developed. Cities like Kilwa, Malindi, Lamu, Sofala, Pemba, and Mombasa developed cultures and economies that were very different from their inland neighbors. The rulers and merchants of these coastal cities really wanted to improve their trade contacts with Arab merchants, so they converted to Islam. They took Arabic names, built huge stone mosques, and claimed ancestry from earlier Arab or Persian travelers. Foreign merchants from the Islamic world, India, China, and elsewhere all journeyed to the Swahili coast, some making it their permanent home. With their cultural and economic connections to the Bantu speaking world and their growing role in the Indian Ocean trade, the Swahili city states connected two worlds. As the Swahili cities were integrated into larger Indian Ocean trade networks, this created a distinctive culture that blended parts of Arab, Persian, Indian, and East African culture. Kiswahili, the Swahili language, is closely connected to the Bantu language group of East and Central Africa. But it was also written in the Arabic script and borrowed many words from Arabic and Persian. Coins from the Swahili city states were made in the same style as those of the Arab empires, with the Sultan's name inscribed in Arabic. These coins circulated through the Indian Ocean trade, and archaeologists have found them as far away as the coast of Australia.
You said the A word.
Okay, fine. Your turn.
Now, although those coins made it all the way back to my backyard, our story is still in East Africa. The expansion of long-distance trade also changed inland communities. The merchants of the Swahili coast acted as middlemen between their inland neighbours and the merchants of the Indian Ocean. They traded for gold, ivory, and enslaved people provided by their neighbours in exchange for goods from afar, like Chinese silks. Trade with coastal cities enabled the rise of some powerful inland African states, like Great Zimbabwe. The rise of the great Swahili merchant cities is just one example of the impacts that growing networks had on local communities. As Indian Ocean and Silk Road trades shifted and expanded, other long-distance trade networks proliferated too. Across the Sahara Desert, the Mediterranean Sea, the Mississippi Valley, Mesoamerica, the Andes Mountains, and the islands of the Pacific Ocean, trade routes extended, connecting different communities. These denser webs of trade allowed more goods, people, and ideas to travel faster and more easily. New technologies circulated, improving navigation and shipbuilding, agriculture, and animal husbandry. Also, systems of belief, especially Buddhism and Islam, were spread through trade networks. Better trade connections also made it easier for some unwelcome travellers, meaning diseases, to spread rapidly. In 1347, the major Afro-Eurasian trading systems collapsed. The immediate cause was the bubonic plague, a disease known as the Black Death, which ravaged Eurasia and North Africa in the 14th century. In a world that had fewer than 500 million people, the plague killed somewhere between 75 and 100 million people as it spread from east to west. Populations recovered slowly in the years that followed.
The plague spread devastation and death along the very trade routes that had been the source of new prosperity. Fortunately, Eurasian societies and networks were able to recover. By the mid 15th century, trade among African, Asian, and European societies was again growing. By 1450, networks across Afro-Eurasia were denser than ever, and new voyages by Portuguese sailors along the coast of West Africa were pioneering new oceanic trade routes that would eventually create a single global economy. Yet, Even then, many parts of the world remain largely separate. Despite increasing connections between communities, for most people, patterns of life remain local.
So, we're making this video in the middle of a global pandemic, and now we're talking about the bubonic plague?
Fun, right? Well, there's more sun left in your day than mine, so that's nice.
Yeah, but it's tomorrow here, so you're still enjoying yesterday's sun and haven't even started this one yet.
We can't keep doing this.